The Sichuan completing its first 3-day navigation test and returning to the shipyard around the expected time is considered an important development because this moment represents the first real demonstration that the ship is functioning as a unified, seaworthy platform. A modern naval vessel is assembled through a long sequence of design work, steel fabrication, modular construction, system installation, integration testing, and pier-side evaluation. All of this work is essentially preparation. None of it confirms how the ship will behave once it leaves the calm conditions of the pier. When the ship departs for its maiden test, it finally enters the stage where the integration of mechanical, electrical, structural, and control systems is tested under real operational conditions. This is why the completion of this stage is regarded as a meaningful step. It is the first time the ship proves that it can operate as a single, functioning engineering system. During the early planning and design stages, engineers create predictions about how the hull will respond to waves, how the weight distribution will affect stability, how the propulsion system will handle load changes, how the electrical grid will balance power demands, and how the ship's internal spaces will respond to vibration. Although computers and simulations can model much of this behavior, real-world performance always includes deviations and unexpected factors. The maiden test is where these assumptions are compared against reality. If the ship maintains stable power, smooth propulsion, predictable handling, and consistent performance during this period, it confirms that the foundation of the design is sound. This is especially important for the Sichuan, which represents a new type within its Navy's fleet structure and therefore cannot rely entirely on previous templates. The vessel's propulsion system is one of the core elements validated during the maiden navigation test. Propulsion on a large ship includes engines or turbines, gearboxes, shafts, bearings, cooling systems, lubrication systems, exhaust management, and control software that regulates power output. Each of these components must work together perfectly, because imbalance or failure in one area can cause a chain reaction affecting the whole ship. During the 3-day test, the propulsion system is not pushed to extreme speeds but is tested through controlled increases and decreases in power to evaluate responsiveness, temperature stability, vibration levels, and fuel consumption patterns. Crews monitor whether any sections of the propulsion train show signs of overheating, misalignment, unusual noise, or unexpected stress. Without observed problems, engineers can be confident that the propulsion system is functioning at the baseline level required for further testing. The ship's maneuvering performance is another crucial area examined during the first sea trial. Steering a large vessel requires coordination between rudders, propellers, and, in many designs, additional thrusters for low-speed handling. Engineers evaluate the responsiveness of the steering system, the turning radius at various speeds, and how the ship reacts when transitioning from one maneuver to another. They also observe the vessel's behavior in gentle waves or currents, noting whether it lists or rolls more than predicted or whether stabilizing systems behave as intended. This information is essential because it helps identify whether the ship requires adjustments to ballast distribution, fin stabilizer tuning, or other modifications before more demanding trials begin. The fact that the Sichuan completed these maneuvers and returned without incident indicates that its basic handling characteristics align with expectations. The electrical power system is equally significant. A ship of this type relies heavily on electrical energy not only for propulsion support but also for navigation systems, communications, deck machinery, lighting, pumps, sensors, and the complex aviation-related equipment that will be tested in later trials. A modern assault ship with large aviation capacity consumes far more electrical power than earlier amphibious vessel designs, and because it is expected to support advanced systems in the future, the electrical grid must be both strong and stable. During the maiden test, engineers evaluate generator output, load distribution, power management algorithms, and the behavior of transformers, converters, and distribution panels. They intentionally vary power loads to simulate different operational scenarios. The absence of major fluctuations, outages, or instability during this phase suggests that the ship's electrical architecture is functioning properly. Another area evaluated during the initial test is internal systems integration. A warship is effectively a floating network of machinery, communications links, computers, sensors, and control stations. Even if many high-end combat systems are not activated at this stage, the basic command network must already be functioning. Crews test internal communication lines, navigation display units, engine room monitoring consoles, damage control systems, fire suppression systems, and various alarms and safety signals. They verify that information flows correctly between critical centers, such as the bridge, machinery control room, aviation control stations, and the well deck management area. If any part of this network experiences delays, miscommunication, or system inconsistencies, engineers investigate and correct them before the next stages of testing. A smooth return from the maiden test implies the internal networks operated without serious faults. The Sichuan is designed to support both amphibious operations and aviation activities. This dual role makes its internal structure more complex than many traditional warships. The well deck at the rear of the ship is used for launching landing craft and amphibious vehicles, and it requires very precise control of ballast and pumps. Engineers must be confident that the ship can take in and expel seawater safely without destabilizing itself. Even if the well deck is not fully operated during the maiden test, the systems tied to it, ballast tanks, water sensors, pumps, drainage mechanisms, and monitoring consoles, must be evaluated at sea, because their performance can differ significantly from pier-side conditions. The maiden trial gives engineers initial data on how the ship maintains trim and stability during normal motion, which will be essential when the more complex well-deck testing begins later. The aviation side of the ship also introduces systems that depend on platform stability. Helicopter operations, unmanned aircraft handling, deck movements, and storage procedures all require smooth deck behavior, reliable power, precise hydraulic operation, and predictable ship motion. During the maiden test, crews typically activate deck equipment, test elevators, observe deck vibration patterns, verify lighting controls, and measure how the ship's motion affects the deck's suitability for future flight trials. These early observations help planners determine how the ship will need to be positioned during later aviation exercises and whether any refinements are required to deck systems. Passing the maiden test without adverse indications gives confidence that the ship's design can support aviation tests when the time comes. Additionally, the maiden test allows the crew to practice fundamental shipboard routines under real conditions. Even if these personnel are part of a temporary trial team, they must develop familiarity with the ship's layout, emergency routes, equipment positions, and coordination procedures. During the 3-day test, drills are often conducted for power loss recovery, internal communication failures, simulated fires, and compartment flooding scenarios. These trials ensure that the ship's emergency systems activate properly and that the crew can respond effectively. The smooth completion of the test suggests that the basic emergency and safety systems performed as required. Returning on schedule also signals that no major structural, mechanical, or power-related problems forced the ship to cut the trial short. In the early phases of a new ship class, unexpected faults are common, and sometimes ships must return early for repairs or adjustments. When this does not happen, it implies that construction quality and system installation were executed well, reducing the likelihood of major redesigns or delays. Beyond the engineering implications, this milestone has organizational significance. The shipbuilding team can now shift to analyzing the data collected during the trial, identifying areas that need fine-tuning, and preparing for the next stage of trials. The Navy's training commands can begin planning for future crew assignments, while logistics personnel begin determining the spare parts, tools, and supplies needed to support the ship during extended operations. The successful completion of the maiden navigation test also influences the scheduling of subsequent trials, propulsion endurance tests, higher speed runs, rough sea evaluations, and finally aviation trials. Despite its importance, this milestone is still only the beginning of a lengthy process. Many months of testing remain. However, passing the maiden navigation test without significant issues shows that the ship's core systems, propulsion, electrical networks, stability, structure, and basic integration, are functioning properly. For a ship intended to serve multiple roles and integrate advanced systems, this early confirmation is a meaningful and encouraging indicator that the overall program is progressing effectively and that the ship is on track to evolve into a fully capable operational asset.